In our previous lesson we explored the thought of Pythagoras and the community he founded at Croton. Today we pause to consider a contemporary of his, active in the same city, whose work deserves its own place in the history of philosophy. His name was Alcmaeon, and he was the first thinker to claim that the brain is the organ of sensation and thought. Long before neuroscience confirmed this intuition, Alcmaeon dissected the optic nerve, argued that the senses connect to the brain through channels or pores, and maintained that health is the equilibrium among the qualities that compose the body. His method was not speculation, but direct observation. In this lesson we shall examine the contributions of a man who, at the dawn of rational thought, laid the foundations of medicine, physiology, and psychology. Alcmaeon of Croton is a singular figure within Presocratic thought. He did not ask about the principle of all things, like the Milesians, nor about the mathematical structure of the cosmos, like Pythagoras. His questions were different, closer to what we would today call medicine and physiology. Where does the mind reside? What is the foundation of health? Why do we fall ill? These may sound like technical matters, but in the 6th century before the Common Era they were philosophical questions of the first order. The problem had two faces. The first was physiological. Which organ receives sensations and produces thought? The Homeric tradition located the mind in the heart or the diaphragm. Alcmaeon departed from that belief. He observed, dissected, and concluded that all sensations converge in the brain through channels or pores. The second face was medical. What is health? Alcmaeon answered with a concept that would prove immensely influential: isonomia, the equality of rights among the qualities that compose the body. The wet and the dry, the hot and the cold must be in equilibrium. If one predominates, illness follows. In both questions, Alcmaeon did something unusual for his time. He did not appeal to myths or religious authorities. He observed directly and reasoned from what he observed. As with nearly all the Presocratics, reconstructing Alcmaeon's thought means working from indirect sources. He wrote a book, On Nature, the first philosophical text tradition places at Croton. But only 4 short fragments and about a dozen scattered testimonies in later authors survive from it. The most valuable source is Theophrastus, Aristotle's pupil, who in his treatise on the senses lays out Alcmaeon's theory of sensation and the channels or pores that connect the sensory organs to the brain in some detail. Alongside Theophrastus, the doxographers provide additional information. Aetius attributes to him the doctrine of the equilibrium of qualities as the cause of health and illness. Diogenes Laertius mentions him briefly in his Lives of the Philosophers. And although it does not name him, the Hippocratic treatise on the sacred disease, which defends the natural origin of epilepsy against religious explanations, is considered partly indebted to Alcmaeon's investigations. The problem, as with all the Presocratics, is distance and fragmentation. We do not read Alcmaeon. We read what others said about him. Alcmaeon lived and worked in Croton, the same city where Pythagoras had founded his community. He was his contemporary, probably somewhat younger, and his work shares with Pythagoreanism a concern with opposites and with harmony. Yet tradition does not include him in the official lists of Pythagoras's disciples. Alcmaeon was not a Pythagorean in the strict sense, but rather an independent thinker who moved in a very closely related intellectual milieu. Croton was at that time a center of an important medical tradition. We know that schools of medicine existed in Magna Graecia before they did in mainland Greece. In this context, Alcmaeon introduced a decisive innovation: anatomical dissection as a method of knowledge. He directly observed the sensory organs, identified the optic nerve, and argued that the senses connect to the brain through channels. His theory of health as a balance of qualities, the hot and the cold, the wet and the dry, probably borrowed from the political language of his time the concept of isonomia, the equality of rights that guarantees the stability of the polis. For Alcmaeon, the body was a city in miniature. If one quality seized too much power, the organism fell ill. Health was the democracy of the humors. We have reached the doctrinal core of Alcmaeon's thought. The most important testimony comes to us from Theophrastus in his treatise on the senses. It reads, "The pores through which sensations occur lead to the brain." This sentence, unassuming as it sounds, contains a revolution in the understanding of the human being. For the first time in the documented history of thought, someone locates in the brain, not in the heart, not in the diaphragm, the center of mental life. Alcmaeon arrived at this conclusion through direct observation. He dissected animals, examined their sensory organs, and discovered that there are channels, he called them poroi, pores, that connect the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the tongue to the brain. Sensations do not occur in the organs themselves, he argued, but travel through those channels to the brain, where they are unified and processed. But Alcmaeon went further. He drew a distinction between sensation, which is common to all animals, and understanding, which is exclusive to human beings. All animals feel, but only humans understand. And this difference is due to the fact that the human brain does not merely receive sensations passively. It actively processes them, relates them, draws conclusions. The brain is, for Alcmaeon, the organ of thought. But Alcmaeon did not stop at the physiology of knowledge. He also formulated a theory of health and disease that would have a lasting influence on Western medicine. Health, he held, is isonomia, the equality of rights, the equilibrium among the opposing qualities that compose the body. The wet and the dry, the hot and the cold, the bitter and the sweet must maintain a balanced proportion. When all these qualities share power without any one dominating the others, the organism is healthy. Illness, by contrast, is monarchia, the predominance of one quality over the rest. If heat seizes power, fever follows. If moisture dominates, fluxes appear. To heal is to restore the lost equilibrium. This terminology is no accident. Alcmaeon borrowed two concepts from the political language of his time. Isonomia was the equality of rights that guaranteed the stability of the polis. Monarchia was the concentration of power in a single person, which led to tyranny. Alcmaeon applied this metaphor to the body. Health is a democracy of qualities, illness, a tyranny of one of them. The body is a city in miniature, and the same laws that govern political coexistence also govern organic equilibrium. With this double thesis, the brain as the seat of the mind and health as isonomia, Alcmaeon laid the foundations of what centuries later would become neuroscience and scientific medicine. Alcmaeon did not merely assert that the brain is the seat of the mind or that health is equilibrium. Like any rigorous thinker, he gave reasons. And those reasons reveal something that sets him apart from most of the Presocratics: his constant appeal to direct observation and experience. Let us examine the three main grounds that support his theses. The first ground is anatomical in nature. Alcmaeon did not deduce that the brain was the seat of sensation from abstract principles. He observed it, he dissected animals, probably goats, pigs, or sheep, and examined their sensory organs. In doing so, he identified channels that connected the eyes, the ears, and the nose to the interior of the skull. He called them poroi, pores or channels. The most obvious of these was the optic nerve, which anyone who has dissected an eye can see clearly. This observation sufficed to refute the old belief that sensations occurred in the heart. The senses do not end in the peripheral organs. They lead to the brain. Direct experience, and not tradition or myth, was for Alcmaeon the criterion of truth. The second ground is more subtle and concerns the difference between feeling and understanding. Alcmaeon observed that all animals, beasts, birds, fish, possess sensory organs similar to our own. They see, they hear, they smell, they taste. They feel, in short. But there is one thing no animal does: understand. No animal processes sensations to draw conclusions, formulate judgments, or pose questions. This difference, Alcmaeon reasoned, cannot lie in the sensory organs, for those organs are basically the same in humans and in animals. It must lie in the brain, which does not merely receive passively what the senses send it, but processes it, relates it, turns it into thought. Sensation is common, understanding is human, and the brain is the organ that marks the difference. The third ground is the most original and unfolds in the domain of medicine. Alcmaeon took two concepts from the political vocabulary of his time and applied them to the body. Isonomia, the equality of rights among citizens, is what keeps the polis stable. Monarchia, the concentration of power in one alone, is what drives it to tyranny and, ultimately, to ruin. Well, Alcmaeon reasoned, the same holds for the organism. Health is the isonomia of the bodily qualities. The wet, the dry, the hot, and the cold must share power without anyone dominating. Illness is monarchia, the tyrannical predominance of one quality that breaks the equilibrium. To heal is to restore the democracy of the humors. With this analogy, Alcmaeon not only explained disease, he linked the order of the body with the order of the city, the microcosm with the political macrocosm. Alcmaeon's theses were no isolated observations. Like all genuine philosophical thought, they set in motion consequences that transformed medicine, philosophy, and the very conception of the human being. Let us examine the four main consequences of his work. The first consequence is medical, and probably the most enduring. The idea that health is the equilibrium of opposing qualities and illness, the predominance of one of them, became the dominant model of Western medicine for over 2 millennia. The Hippocratic treatises took up this theory and developed it. Galen, in the 2nd century of our era, systematized it into his theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Until the 19th century, European physicians continued to explain illness as a humoral imbalance. And although it may now seem an outdated theory, its conceptual core, health as a dynamic equilibrium, remains present in contemporary medicine under other names: homeostasis, regulation, balance. Alcmaeon was the first to formulate this intuition. The second consequence is philosophical, political in character. The metaphor of the body as a city, isonomia as health, monarchia as illness, inaugurated a model of thought that would run through centuries of philosophy. Plato, in the Republic, will compare the just soul to a well-governed city. Aristotle will draw analogies between the organism and the polis. The idea that the body and the city are governed by the same laws is one of the great metaphors of Western thought, and Alcmaeon was its first architect. The third consequence is psychological. By locating the mind in the brain rather than in the heart, Alcmaeon opened the path toward a psychology grounded in physiology. His distinction between feeling and understanding anticipated debates that would occupy philosophers and psychologists for centuries. Is thought anything more than elaborated sensation? Is there a difference of degree or of kind between perceiving and understanding? We arrive thus at the fourth consequence, which is at once a closure and a legacy. With Alcmaeon, the medical tradition of Magna Graecia reaches its first theoretical formulation. There were physicians before him, no doubt, but he was the first to offer a general theory of health and disease grounded in rational principles rather than religious beliefs. His method, direct observation, dissection, inference from what is observed, and his doctrine of equilibrium would be taken up by the Hippocratic school, and through it, by all subsequent medicine. If today we conceive of the body as a system that tends toward equilibrium, if we understand illness as a rupture of that equilibrium and healing as its restoration, we owe it in part to this thinker from Croton who, 25 centuries ago, looked inside a dead animal and grasped something essential about the living. Interpreting Alcmaeon runs up against difficulties that have occupied specialists. The first is his relationship to Pythagoreanism. His theory of opposites and his doctrine of the soul's immortality through perpetual motion are clearly akin to Pythagorean thought. Yet the ancient lists of Pythagoras's disciples do not include him. Aristotle, who knew both traditions well, never calls him a Pythagorean. Was Alcmaeon a member of the community, an external sympathizer, or a wholly independent thinker who shared certain concerns with the Pythagoreans? The second question concerns his disciplinary identity. Was Alcmaeon a physician who philosophized or a philosopher who practiced medicine? The question is anachronistic, for in the 6th century BCE there was no clear boundary between the two fields. But it matters for understanding his place in history. Finally, there is the problem of his actual influence. The Hippocratic treatises that develop the theory of the equilibrium of qualities do not name Alcmaeon. Did they read him directly? Or was his doctrine transmitted orally, his name fading into the anonymity of the medical tradition? The scantiness of the evidence prevents a conclusive answer. The assessment of Alcmaeon has varied markedly among historians. Geoffrey Kirk, faithful to his minimalist stance on the Presocratics, maintained that the testimonies are too fragmentary to regard him as a systematic thinker. In his view, Alcmaeon was an astute physician who made interesting observations, but not a philosopher in the rigorous sense. His ideas, Kirk argued, lacked the theoretical ambition that characterizes a Pythagoras or an Anaximander. Against this skepticism, Guthrie defended a more generous reading. In his monumental History of Greek Philosophy, he presented Alcmaeon as the decisive link between Pythagorean philosophy and Hippocratic medicine. His historical importance, Guthrie argued, is greater than the scant surviving fragments suggest. James Longrigg, in a now classic study of 1993, went further still. For Longrigg, Alcmaeon was the first scientist of Western medicine. His empirical method, dissection, direct observation of the optic nerve, inference from what is observed, inaugurated a tradition that would culminate in the Hippocratic treatises. 3 readings, 3 Alcmaeons, the physician without theory, the link between Pythagoras and Hippocrates, and the first scientist of medicine. We have reached the end of our lesson on Alcmaeon of Croton. 3 points deserve to be held onto. The first is his boldest thesis: the brain is the seat of sensation and thought. Long before neuroscience confirmed this intuition, Alcmaeon dissected animals, examined the optic nerve, and argued that all the senses converge in the brain through channels or pores. He did not deduce this from abstract principles. He observed it. The second point is his theory of health. Alcmaeon defined it as isonomia, the equilibrium among the qualities that compose the body. The wet and the dry, the hot and the cold must maintain a harmonious proportion. If one of them predominates, if it becomes monarchia, a tyrant, the organism falls ill. This theory, which borrowed its vocabulary from the political language of classical Greece, became the dominant model of Western medicine for over 2 millennia. Hippocrates took it up. Galen systematized it. And although we now speak of homeostasis rather than isonomia, the fundamental intuition remains the same. The third point is perhaps the most important for the history of thought. Alcmaeon was not a speculator. He was an observer. At a time when most philosophers reasoned from abstract principles, he opened dead animals, looked inside them, and drew conclusions from what he saw. That method, direct experience as the criterion of truth, anticipated that of modern science. That is why we close with this thought: Alcmaeon did not ask the myths. He asked the bodies, and in them he found answers that still illuminate us. For those wishing to pursue Alcmaeon in the context of Presocratic medicine and philosophy further, several works are indispensable. The standard critical edition of the Fragments remains Diels and Kranz's Presocratic Fragments, together with Theophrastus's testimony in his treatise on the senses. As for secondary literature, the first volume of Guthrie's monumental History of Greek Philosophy offers a detailed treatment of Alcmaeon as the link between Pythagoreanism and Hippocratic medicine. The collaborative volume by Kirk, Raven, and Schofield, The Presocratic Philosophers, remains the essential guide. And for situating Alcmaeon within the history of medicine, James Longrigg's Greek Rational Medicine is indispensable reading. In our next lesson we shall return to Pythagoreanism and enter the thought of Philolaus of Croton, the first Pythagorean to set down the school's doctrines in writing and who developed a cosmology that would influence Plato. We hope you will join us there. Thank you for your attention. Until next time.